took a lot of people around the world all to contribute a little bit to make a large victory.
And if that doesn't give the labor movement and its allies hope for the future, I can't imagine what would. This is a testament to how important, how essential it is for us to work with our brothers and sisters abroad.
It is difficult to comprehend the degree of human exploitation that is being spawned by greed and corruption. It is almost unfathomable. The level of violence, the number of beatings and murders, the government crackdowns, all visited on workers who are merely asking for a living wage and the chance for a life with dignity. This sustained and ruthless corporate attack is not only destroying the lives and health of millions of workers in developing countries, it is undermining workers' rights and destroying the middle class right here in North America. All that stands in the way of corporate global dominance is the force of organized labor. In Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas, workers are joining together to fight back against these forces of corporate oppression. This struggle for economic justice will be long, hard, and fought across national borders. To win, organized labor must become an integrated and cohesive international movement. So today, just as in the past, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers is leading the way.
In the 1800s, a machinist member attended the first founding Congress of the International Metalworkers Federation in Zurich, Switzerland. And just this past June, the Machinists Union attended the first founding Congress of the new Global Union Federation that represents millions and millions of manufacturing workers on every single continent. This means that wherever a multinational corporation is throughout the world, they not only face machinist members, they face workers in the manufacturing arena throughout the world. It makes us stronger, more vibrant, more creative, and more powerful in the days of globalization.
We may work in different industries and live oceans apart, but the seeds of global solidarity are sprouting up everywhere. Shoots of international labor cooperation are branching out and beginning to bear fruit. Nowhere is this success more evident than in the export processing zones of Indonesia, where workers, mostly young women, toil long hours and have only temporary contracts. The International Metalworkers Federation and its local affiliates, FSPMI and Lominik, have made organizing these EPZ workers a priority. Hundreds of non-union workers learn about their rights and are introduced to the benefits of union membership through organizing roadshows that bring the union message directly to the workers. These local events last the entire day, and the union provides transportation so all workers can attend whenever their shift ends. By aggressively tailoring their organizing methods to local conditions and focusing on women, unions in Indonesia are not only sowing the seeds of global solidarity, they are swelling the ranks of the worldwide labor movement.
Solidaritas Internasional.
The labor movement in Honduras has long suffered at the hands of a volatile political culture, willing to not only foster, but willing to promote violent anti-union activities. It was in this toxic labor environment that Russell Athletic Corporation, the largest private employer in Honduras, a company that is ultimately owned by financial powerhouse Berkshire Hathaway, was using every weapon at its disposal, including closing its factory, to crush a newborn workers' movement and stop its employees from joining a union. But even against these overwhelming odds, solidarity won the day.
Talk about an underdog battle. You have apparel workers in Honduras, $1 an hour apparel workers, with minimal organization and no resources, armed only with courage and determination, going up against a giant multinational corporation ultimately owned by Warren Buffett, one of the richest people in the history of the world. And yet at the end of the day, when all was said and done, it's the workers who won.
This tremendous victory was the result of an innovative international alliance.
One of the extraordinary and hopeful things about this effort was the incredible alliance across borders between low-wage workers in Honduras and college students across the United States and Canada. People who have very little in common, but who made common cause in an effort to advance the goal of respect for the rights of workers.
And it produced what many labor activists believe to be the most sweeping labor agreement that manufacturing in Central America has ever seen.
Ultimately, the union was able to negotiate an agreement that called for the reopening of the factory Russell had closed to destroy the union, the rehiring of all of the fired workers, the negotiation in good faith of a collective bargaining agreement, and perhaps most important, a commitment by Russell to respect the right to unionize and collective bargaining at every one of its factories in Honduras. But this is without question the most significant breakthrough for the cause of labor rights, and particularly the right to organize, that we have seen, not just in the collegiate apparel industry, but anywhere in the global apparel sector in the era of outsourcing.
The victory at Russell was a long battle, and many individuals made tremendous sacrifices. But all agree that a significant amount of the credit belongs to the students who tirelessly pressured colleges and universities to recognize the labor rights of workers manufacturing the clothing that bore the names, logos, and mascots of their sports teams.
Apparel companies like Russell and Adidas and Nike are partners with universities in the business of college sports. The universities get a royalty every time a sweatshirt is sold. Apparel companies make money every time a sweatshirt is sold. The insight, the critical insight that students had was that that relationship could serve as a point of leverage to hold the companies accountable for the way that they treat their workers.
Assistant General Counsel at IAM, Maria Roper, was a young activist and leader at United Students Against Sweatshops.
Students came up with the idea to try and pressure companies globally to make a difference, to support workers' rights. They're smart, they like a strategy that looks at the power and can say, hey, we're important to Russell Athletic. We know that we're their target demographic. We know that our colleges and universities buy in mass quantities. And so we know that we can cut at the purse of Russell Athletic in a pretty big way.
And they did. These determined students managed to drive Russell to the bargaining table by persuading more than 100 colleges and universities to terminate their business relationship with the company.
We learned a lot with Russell Athletic. We learned that when a union organizes and when it's supported by students abroad and community groups all over the world, that we can have a big win. And I hope that we can now point to Russell Athletic and say, hey, you other companies, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, what happened to Russell's going to happen to you.
One thing that's very clear is that as multinational corporations expand their reach across international borders, the labor rights movement must do the same. The workers in Honduras, no matter how great their courage, could not have won this victory without the support of student activists, and yet working together, these two disparate groups were able to achieve something extraordinary.
Our ever-growing global union alliances are helping us send a message to multinational corporations and are strengthening the IAM's ability to organize and improve conditions for workers right here in North America. Ikea, the corporate flagship of Sweden, has a global reputation for being a progressive company that works well with unions and respects workers' rights.
The Ikea Corporation, the largest user of wood products in the world, bills itself as the best. It takes perhaps the most socially advanced Swedish culture and markets that as its brand logo.
But Ikea's treatment of employees in its Swedwood production plant, located in Danville, Virginia, was a far cry from the wages and working conditions enjoyed by its workers back home in Sweden.
Once Ikea Swedwood learned that they could reduce the wages and still fill the positions, they started cutting the wages of the workers. Then they took away the weekend. They then figured out they didn't have to give them vacation. So the first 2 years they got 12 days of vacation. The third year they got 4. Of course, the average Swede, the first day on the job is eligible for 3 weeks.
When faced with this unfair treatment and these deteriorating working conditions, the employees of the Swedwood plant turned to the IAM for help in forming a union. A team of IAM organizers immediately went to work in Danville, but they wasted no time in joining forces with our international labor allies to put pressure on IKEA all around the world, especially back home in Sweden.
When a consumer, brand-oriented marketing entity like IKEA wraps itself in the Swedish flag, it generates a vulnerability, which is it now has to be accountable to the Swedish people. And through a series of media activities, we were able to get the Swedish people to understand that the image of IKEA was very different from the reality and practice of IKEA on the ground. And perhaps the best single example of that was one day in the Swedish newspaper on the front of the business page of a very large daily in Stockholm, the headline, and not quite second coming, but very large headlines read, IKEA embarrasses Sweden. The Swedes, as Americans, have a deep and profound love of their country and a pride in their social model. And to have IKEA let them down had phenomenal repercussions throughout the entire IKEA corporate ladder.
Together with our brothers and sisters from the Building and Woodworkers International, the Machinists Union continued to increase the pressure with an all-out public relations assault on IKEA and the company's labor practices in Danville.
Through the use primarily of the Swedish media, but of in-store activity in Germany, of picket lines around stores in Melbourne, Australia, of phone banking in France and Belgium, of 84,000 emails generated in 48 hours by an internet social network partner in the United States. And so the conversation between us and BWI, between us and the Swedes, us and the Australians, us and the Germans, us and the French, just kept going on and on and on until the pressure reached the point that IKEA could no longer ignore it.
As a result, on July 27, 2011, in the small town of Danville, Virginia, 335 new brothers and sisters secured their labor rights by voting to become members of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers.
The day after the election, the gap between hours, wages, and working conditions in Danville, Virginia, and the social contract that exists in Sweden closed dramatically. We still have a way to go, but today, every worker in Danville has representation by a shop steward. Every worker in Danville has due process. Every worker in Danville has a promotion process that is colorblind. Every worker in Danville will get, during the term of this contract, not 21 days, but 15 days of vacation. This victory belongs first and foremost to the workers in Danville, Virginia. They took the risk. They now have the reward, but they couldn't do it alone. It took Per Olof, the president of GS, the Swedish Woodworkers Union. It took Ambit Houston, the general secretary of BWI. It took a lot of people around the world, all to contribute a little bit to make a large victory, and we could not have done it without them.
There is no doubt that the power of solidarity is spreading around the globe.
The victory at Russell Athletic proved to us and the world that when we work together, we can win.
What is extraordinary about this victory is that in the harshest possible labor rights environment, this small group of workers with great courage but minimal resources and power were able to bring to heel one of the largest and most powerful corporations on the globe.
In unity, there is strength. Together, we can help forge a future that expands human potential and helps build a world where all workers share in the fruits of their labor. It won't be easy, but together, there is much that we can do.
We face many challenges ahead. Nothing has ever been easy in the labor movement. But one thing we know, only by working together, by evolving, by coming up with new and creative strategies, can we tackle the challenges that await us.
The degree of our success will depend on how well we design our plan. Now's the time to explore all our options, to expand our horizons, and design a plan of action that will deliver hope for all who toil.